And we're off to an auspicious start when our special guest, come on, you could do it. I believe in you. I mean, we got the audio, so that's important, but at the same time, it's like, excuse you. There's things that need to happen. Oh goodness, what in the? Oh, I know what happened. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the 21st century of dumb stuff. I mean, that's yeah. All right. Let's see if this works. I bet you this works. That nope, that didn't work. That worked. Okay. Okay. Fixing technical difficulties because what is the keep without technical difficulties? I swear. Oh no. No. Oh man. One of these days, we're going to get through an entire thing without technical difficulties, and I'm not going to know what to do with myself because it just doesn't happen. But on that note, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Keep Lounging. I'm your host, Jeremiah, and with me is my special guest. Wait, let's see if I can get it right. Brenda! Some of you may recognize Brenda as the wonderful, pleasant, very personable Rye Excellence. Yeah, because that's, how we do here. Um, it's the best I could do here. So thank you, Brenda, for coming on. And, we were chatting before show. I was telling Brenda that it's nice to actually be able to have a one-on-one conversation that isn't either pre-game panic, um, in-game panic, post-game panic / exhaustion, or our bonfire nights where Jay's trying not to burn himself and other things. So yeah, it's wonderful. Um, so yeah, just quick announcements for everybody. We have tomorrow night our next episode 50. And I know we promised to dress up, but we forgot. So, um, possibly I was thinking like our final episode, like the big bad boss fight or the that's fair. That's I feel like Lord needs to give us a little warning that hey guys, this is it. This is your final boss. Also fair. Also fair. Um but if not, when we do our game wrap up after party, maybe we can our Q&A dress up and celebrate the fact that we made it through the campaign. However many of us actually live. Which is important. But yeah, that's tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central Time. Uh, Same bat time, same bat channel, as you can see below. Woo, woo. Check out our social medias for updates on when and where things happen, cool content like this. And yeah, so jumping right in, and I just realized that I had something muted, so I have no idea if they've heard anything. Um, I'm pretty sure they heard me because I'm obnoxiously loud and I always forget to mute myself, but whatever. Technical difficulties!
Worst comes to worst, it just seems like you were having a conversation with yourself.
That go to my other channel. There, I have conversations with myself. um, no, but welcome, Brenda. Thank you for joining. For those who don't know who Brenda is, uh, so from our perspective, I'm gonna let Brenda introduce herself, but I'm gonna give a little bit of our perspective first. So Brenda was this elusive character that was a part of Lauren's story. And I don't mean her D&D story, I mean her life story that we had heard of, and she would talk about the time she spent with Brenda and the things that she and their other friend Chelsea, who we've talked about before, would do. And Brenda was this wonderful person who would come hang out with them and run Firefly games for them and make Lauren cry and all these other things. And we're like, are you sure this person's real? Are you sure? And so one day, Lauren's like, hey, how would you feel about having a guest player on in our D&D game? It's like, sure, that sounds like it'd be fun. And so we got to meet Brenda prior to her coming on, um, as one of the Stitch Witches. And for those of you who don't know what that is, spoilers. We'll get to that later. But then we got to meet Brenda and Rye and Game, and she was only supposed to be there for like an episode or two or three, and that turned into like what, 3 months, 2 months, something like that.
Yes.
And we were just like, you know what? She finally did actually leave. And you can go to our YouTube and watch all the episodes. So she did actually leave, and we were like, but we don't want her to go. Bring her back! And so yeah, now Brenda's stuck with us for as long as she'll allow us to keep her. So Brenda, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh. I always hate these questions because I'm like, people ask them and my brain immediately goes, there's nothing interesting about me. What am I supposed to say?
That is lies and balderdash, or as Garrett would say, total clown shoes.
Total clown shoes. But I don't know, I guess on the flip side, I've been friends with Lawrence for over half my life at this point. And it's really funny because we actually met at a group of teenagers who would meet at the library for reading events that they would have going on. So we had met previously there, and then I think neither one of us really interacted with each other, but I ended up meeting her when we went to high school together. And I ended up meeting her at that point in time, and I recognized her immediately as like, oh, you're the girl I saw at that library group. So I was already a little familiar with her, and then I don't know if any of you have seen this, but there's a previous live chat that we did where we got into an argument about who was friends first, because Chelsea was kind of in classes with me and classes with Lauren, and so Chelsea's the one who sort of mutually knew everybody first, and then through Chelsea the three of us started hanging out. And so I've known Lauren for forever, and she was telling me about, this D&D group that she was playing games with and the stuff that was going on with Star Wars, and then transitioning into the World War II game, and then transitioning from that into her own game where she started DMing. And it was always kind of a point of conversation with us, and because we would get together and be like, what has been happening with your week, what's been going on with your day, and Lauren would talk a little bit about the game and things that were happening. And then when she got started on her own campaign, bouncing ideas off of us, getting things like that. And so I had started playing D&D, I guess like a year before Lauren asked me to come in and play with you guys for a little bit. And so she knew about that. And that's at some point in time, I think Jonathan was supposed to be gone for a little bit. So she's like, oh, well, you can just come in and hang out for a little bit while Jonathan's gone, which you guys had always been like on the flip side, the stories I was hearing about you guys through like the get-togethers you would have and the games that you guys were playing and everything. And we all finally met. We had like a Christmas get-together and played board games. And then the next thing I knew, I was agreeing to be this random character. And Lauren asked me one week, she was like, hey, would you be willing to be a guest player on my campaign? And I said, sure. And about a week later, I had the character and her whole backstory. So yeah, it just kind of went from there.
That's fantastic. So you said you've known Lauren for half your life, and you're still young, so that's not a long time. But have you lived in Texas your whole life, or are you from other state?
I have lived in Texas for the majority of my life. There was a really brief period where I lived in Oklahoma and came right back.
Fair, as most people do.
But yeah, no, I'm Texas through and through. I was born in Central Texas, moved to North Texas whenever I was little, and have lived in the North Texas area for the majority of my life. So
nice.
Yep, this is what I know. Don't think I could ever really leave it.
Right. Okay, Lauren's told me stories about y'all's retirement plans. Those aren't even in the U.S., much less still in Texas. All right.
I think what we finally settled on, because Chelsea really wants us to move to actual North Carolina when we retire. Which, if you want a fun time, talk to Wes about the Carolinas.
I'm waiting for him to jump in the chat any second. Be like, no!
His little spidey sense is going off. But so that's where Chelsea was thinking. I personally really love the Pacific Northwest. I took a trip up there whenever I was in my early 20s. And we went there's some islands off of the Washington coast, and we went out to one of those and then took a ferry into Canada. Gorgeous. Absolutely loved it. And I felt like, even though I was nowhere near the top of the world, I felt like I was on top of the world because it would be like midnight and there was still light outside. Just loved it. So I want to move to the Pacific Northwest, but Chelsea absolutely refuses because it's expensive up there, and Lauren refuses because it's cold up there.
Right. I was gonna say, I don't know how Lauren would even handle North Carolina. The one that's like, her comfort temperature is like 10 degrees shy of surface of the sun.
There is literally no place on the planet that all three of us, I think, could move together where everyone would be completely satisfied.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
At this point in time, we've settled on either doing hill country in Central Texas, or if that doesn't work, I think the most recent discussion was the potential of moving to Australia.
Why?
Because we'll be old and retired. I don't know.
I mean that's fair. I get that, but at the same time, like, you've survived to retirement. Why risk it all on the devil's playground? And my apologies to anybody who actually lives in Australia and enjoys it there, but everything there is designed to kill you and eat you. Not just kill you and leave you to rot, but kill you and eat you. Why?
I don't know, because, we're young and we're thinking at this point in time about what we like right now, and Australia sounds really nice. That's
like Australia's where God went, this is really cool, but it's probably gonna eat everyone. I think we're gonna put it on an island that nobody will find. And then the English went and found it and dumped their prisoners there, and the prisoners went, you know what?
Well, the indigenous people figured out how to live with it. I'm sure we can too.
Okay, that's a whole nother breed of, and once again, bred to kill you. Those people are hardy. Like,
they're very hardy.
Like, no joke. I mean, if we're ever invaded by aliens, I'm going to Australia. I will go to Australia, and I will make friends with somebody. Because
Maybe we're just predicting the future, and by the time we're ready to retire, that's when the aliens arrive.
Okay, that's fair. That's where we'll actually have the technological advancements. Will get far enough to where aliens will go, oh, maybe we could go here. That's not a bad idea.
There you go. Yeah.
So, and in case you're wondering, these are the conversations we actually have back when we were in person.
Just imagine all of 4 of these conversations happening at the same time, and that's basically a bonfire.
No joke.
And then at some point in time, someone hears something in a different conversation that piques their interest, and we all suddenly turn to that topic.
That honestly, that is more true than I have ever heard, because Jordan and I, we discussed this in our thing. We are super ADHD. Our brains just boom, 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 boom. Oh, say hi to Lauren. She just tuned in.
Hi, Lauren.
But our brains just rapid fire. When we get all together around the bonfire, y'all catch the ADD bug, because y'all are just as bad.
You've got a lot of people there that I think, especially right now with quarantine, it's been one of those, you only can see people so much in person, and so it becomes one of those, you get to see a lot of people in person, and you're just kind of bouncing around too.
It's hey, we don't get a lot of time together. Let's spend as much of it as we can talking to everyone we can all at the same time. Lauren said hi, Brenda.
Hello.
I realized that you don't have access to the chat, and I was like, oh.
Hi, Lauren.
But Lauren, you missed all the conversations we had about you earlier. It was fantastic. Oh, too bad. Yes, I poked the buttons.
Bait the DM. Bait the DM.
Hey, she's already killed my character twice now, okay?
I feel like some of that was self-inflicted based on stories I've heard.
Okay, one of those was legitimately self-inflicted. That was my bad. I accept it. I am no longer allowed to Jaeger other characters because of said stupidity. That being said, the other one was not my fault. Not my fault. Go back and watch the episode. Not my fault.
I just love how Lauren gets super into how would these NPCs actually respond to the fact that they have killed this person, because with you, she was like, well, they would be really upset about the fact that you killed Glory, so they're still going to try and mutilate you.
Right.
And with mine, she's like, well, technically they view you as food. So if they can, they're going to try and take you down to their lair.
Right. They're going to numb right. Lauren's like, the other one you still totally deserved. I beg to differ. I don't believe that I deserve to have my freaking arm chopped off.
I get humored by it, because I think it just, similar to a conversation that we had before we started this, it's very much just how she gets very invested in the story she's telling, so you get very invested in the story she's telling. So
no
it's
kidding.
They are starting to cut off Val's arm, so all of us are immediately like, okay, so we're gonna kill that one first.
This is what we're starting with. Well, and I think that's part of what makes her such a great DM, is she gets so invested, and when she's not running multitude of universes in her mind all at the same time. When she's killing the characters. But she gets so invested that you can't help but also get sucked in and invested in the story, and it's just like,
Yep.
But
Yep.
so, yeah, for those of you who haven't figured out from any of our previous podcasts and this one, we enjoy D&D, and we enjoy our game, and we enjoy each other, and we have fun, and we like it, and yeah, these are the shenanigans we honestly get up to, and the conversations that have Wes, John, and I. So, for those who don't know, Wes, John, and I all live together. We have literally spent hours throughout the week just discussing, planning, strategizing, and Lauren gets so ticked because she can't be a part of it. I'm just like, well, you have Brenda.
I think that was more true before I was playing with her, because she had a better opportunity of being like, okay, so this is what's going on and I need to plan for this. And so Chelsea and I could come in and be like, well, you can think about this and this and this. And now that I'm playing, it's very much one of those like, I don't want to spoil your surprises, so you don't get to talk to me about this stuff.
Right. So funny. I'm looking forward to the next campaign when she's actually not the DM, and just watching her freak out as much as we've been freaking out. Like, ha! No, see, I love having Lauren as a player too, from a DM's perspective, and I'm super interested to see how everybody else kind of coexists, because for us, this game was, for a lot of us, our first long campaign that we've been a part of. You know, Garrett, Jordan, and some of the others that were playing with us at the time, it's like we had never been a part of a long campaign. I think Wes had played some in the Marines. I've been playing forever and a day, because I'm old and that's what we do. And Jordan had played like some variation of it. That was pretty much it. And so none of us knew what we were doing, how to interact. Now we've been playing together for 2 years, and yeah, oh my gosh, actually it is 2 years. Where's the time gone? But we've been playing for 2 years, and we've grown to trust each other. We've grown to care about each other, care about our characters. It's like, okay, going into this next campaign, we want to have these amazing interactions that we've been dreaming about from day one, and now we're kind of figuring out, okay, how to have it. And then now we have you as part of the wonderfulness. Lauren also reminded me that this is also her first campaign as DM, so yeah. But we're going to get into more of those details when I actually have Lauren on here, so I won't spoil too much about her. But this idea of being able to build these relationships, and I want to see how, because I've only played with Lauren in our Star Wars campaign with her as a player, and as in our World War II campaign that I ran. And I have this moment from a one-on-one session that we did, where her character got kidnapped, and so we had to figure out what happened. Mm-hmm. And to this day, is still one of my favorite Lauren stories. Is her character was tied to a chair, and in a normal straight back chair with her arms chained behind the chair. And Lauren spent probably 15-20 minutes trying to figure out how to get out of this chair. And I'm just sitting there dying behind my DM screen, just laughing at all the things she was trying. I'm like, so I finally is like, hey, Lauren, have you tried standing up? And she realized that the rope or the chain that she was tied to was not attached to the chair. It was attached to just her arms, and all she had to do was stand up. So we had this moment of, I'll look over at Lauren when she's overcomplicating something and just be like, hey, Lauren, have you tried standing up? And I'm looking forward to having those moments with y'all as well, of not just the, hey, have you tried standing up, but the crazy stories that we get to tell. And that's one of the reasons I love this particular group of people so much, is we tell these wonderful stories. I mean, we hadn't even met you, and you come in and it's like, here's this crazy character who has this wonderful backstory that we know nothing about, but we were all so intrigued. And like, I mean, 10 minutes into meeting Rye, we're all like, I want to know. And Rye was like, hell no. No, you don't get to know. You have to earn this knowledge.
Yep. 1,000%. That is exactly the mentality.
Well, and from your perspective, I mean, you were coming from a group of people who you'd met like once or twice before coming in. And then what was like, I mean, for my benefit, what was it from your perspective coming in and meeting all of our characters and, the craziness that went on?
I think the place it actually kind of starts is the fact that I had only been playing D&D for pretty much a year at that point. And the people that I play my home game with are actually, I hadn't met any of them before I started playing with them. The guy who was DMing at the time worked with my brother, and originally was going to be both my brother and I playing, and then Josh wasn't able to continue with it because he had other obligations that would take up his time. And so my first time meeting them was the first game that I actually played with them. So I, from that perspective, was already kind of familiar with like, okay, meeting new people. I think for me, the bigger thing that I was worried about jumping into it was you guys already had an established dynamic. And I thought I had an idea of who my character was, but I mean, characters always evolve as you play them. Rye is technically the second character I have ever created in D&D. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like have her authentically as a character and the interaction she's going to have. And then I had met 3 of you before. I'd never met Garrett before. I'd never met Jordan before. And I still didn't meet Jordan for 1 or 2 sessions. And then as Jordan discussed, the first time I met him in person was at Thanksgiving last year.
Right.
So there was also just this nerves of like, trying to play a new character, getting into an already established dynamic, but also just the fact of like, I sort of know you guys, but I don't know where I can push buttons and where pushing buttons is going to cause issues. And so there was definitely a lot of nerves. And I mean, there's always nerves whenever you're playing, right? Like you never know what's going into it. So I still have nerves every single time before we start playing. And then when we get into the game and stuff happens and I start freaking out, I get more nerves. But that initial wave of just being really nervous about playing my character and figuring out which boundaries I could push with you guys that you would be comfortable with, that was probably the biggest thing that I had to get through over that first like month.
That's
and then we got past all of that, and then Rye left, and it was like this, the following Saturday was this like joyful moment of like, oh, hey, I've got time. I can, do stuff. It's great. And then all of a sudden, I would get like midway through the weekend, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back now. So it was definitely one of those, like, it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And it was really neat just to see how that dynamic is different from the home game dynamic. Like, they're both great, but they're different dynamics. So once I got past those initial nerves, got really comfortable playing with you guys, it was definitely one of those, like, I want to go back to those characters, I want to go back to those conversations. Like, there's so much that they don't know, and I want them to be able to find out about it, which of course all of that's happening at the very end of the game.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and that's honestly, like, that is a hard part for any group, even friends who have known each other for years, is that interaction as characters of, what's okay, what's not. There's things that for some people, goes so far as to ruin the game for them. There's others things that are like, no, please push this button. I want to explore this. And it takes quite a bit of time to figure out, okay, what's on one side of the line, what's on other, what's in the gray area in between, and the craziness that is that. from my perspective, like, you've done a fantastic job of just blending in with the group, and it's like, we actually think back about it sometimes. We're like, how did we do this without her? It's like, we're
It's definitely interesting to reflect, because I can remember I can't remember at what point in time this happened, but it was pretty early in Rye joining the group. Rye and Celiax got into an argument, and we got finished with that, and the cameras turned off, and Wes texted me, or he said something to me, I can't remember, and he was like, that was really good. And so I can remember there were a couple of times in those first couple of months where it was like, just a couple of check-ins, like, are you okay that this happened? Or I wasn't sure if you would be comfortable with this, so I didn't do that. But yeah, it's one of those, like, there's a couple of moments where I have to remember the fact that you guys have history before me.
Right? And honestly, though, it's for us, when we were actually discussing, the possibility of bringing you on as a permanent member and everything, we all made the same joke, and then realized we were all serious. It's like, we want Brenda to be our friend too. This isn't just, she can't just be Lauren's friend. Now, granted, you've known Lauren the longest. She knew you first, so she always gets first dibs. We get that. But she has to share. To what?
I will cut people for her.
Right? But she has to share. That's the rule, It's just like with Jordan. Once we proved he wasn't a hologram, we had to share too. Because people...
I'm still not sure about that, but okay.
Hey, you got to actually meet him, Now,
it was COVID times. I couldn't touch him. How was I supposed to know he's not just some sort of...
Well, I mean, he could have been an android, that is still an option. Although I feel like an android would be smart enough not to cut off his own finger.
It's for character and backstory.
Okay, that's fair. Gotta have some level of authenticity, Nobody can be
right through it.
Yeah. Right? Nobody can be perfect. So, you mentioned in your story, kind of switching gears here for a second. You mentioned Lauren said he could totally be a phantom. But so you mentioned your brother. So obviously you have at least one sibling. Do you big family, little family?
Just me and my older brother. That's it.
So you're the baby of the family. That explains so much.
That's supposed to mean, Jeremiah.
That it explains so much.
You started this. What's that supposed to mean?
As we have discussed on several episodes, I will throw this out there. I set myself up for this pitch. I'll take the hit. That there are personality traits that go along with certain stereotypes, and certain stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. And the babies of the family tend to be button pushers. And if
don't do that.
You are so full of crap. I could feel the lightning about to strike through the camera. So yeah, if we have technical difficulties now, it's because Brenda just told an absolute lie, and God is gonna smite her. But no, you are fantastic at pushing buttons. You don't just like machine gun. Like, Wesley is a machine gun button pusher. He just throws stuff out there, and every now and then something hits. You are a sniper. You're just like, I'm gonna wait for it, pew! And we're just sitting there like, what the crap? And not just you, but like even your character is like that. Rye is 100%. Now, I feel like Rye is more along the lines of her button pushing is making us actually be more introspective. Yes, that is the right word. I was sitting there like, wait, hold on. Jay used a big word. Is that a right one? But Rye's button pushing tends to be more introspective. Brenda's button pushing is just like, how much of a reaction can I get out of this? Can I poke it? It's like, you're the person with the mousetrap. Like, I want to touch it. I'm gonna do it. Snap! Ah! All right, let's do it again. So that's where I was going with that. It definitely explains. It explains a lot. It explains a lot. My little sister is the baby of the family, and she is a button pusher. She's also very quiet. Like, she is very very. She's ambivert, but with introverted tendencies, and she's very much the. She'll wait for it, and you won't even you'll say something, and then out of nowhere, here comes this Mack truck of her little snark that'll just plow you over.
We have the safety of older siblings to have, like, we can sit back and observe and watch the way people interact and the way people work, and we've got the safety of older siblings to go out there and, like, try all of the things and figure out the fact that you're gonna get slapped in the face for this, but that actually will get you somewhere. So I think a lot of times that's what ends up happening with people who are younger siblings, is you get very used to watching, and then you're a sibling, so obviously it becomes one of those, like, I figured out how you work, so now I'm going to use it against you.
I mean, that totally makes sense. Because I know, like, growing up for me, my younger sibling, like, I was the experiment. Well, I'm the oldest of four. I was the experiment. By the time my little sister came around 10 years later, and she is the absolute baby of the family. 3 older brothers. She very do what?
Must have loved that.
For the first probably 10 years of her life, and then she realized that we're kind of afraid of her. And then by the time she hit her teenage years, she realized we were terrified of her. So yeah, she was like, I am the queen of the roost. I am daddy's little princess, and I will murder you in your sleep if you piss me off. And we 100% believed that was true. So, whether she would go through with it or not, we'll never know, because we were too terrified to push that button.
Good.
But there's this. I was definitely the. I pushed all the boundaries. I was the one climbing the trees, trying to go do things. I was also a gymnast as a child. So I went immediately from school to gymnastics 5 days a week, and then on Saturday I was there from morning to night. By the time I hit 13, it was literally gym at 6, from 6 to noon, school from noon to 4, gym from 4 to 11, 5 days a week, and then on Saturdays you didn't get that break. During the summer it was 6 to 11 with a 2-hour lunch break, and so I wasn't around a whole lot for the siblings, other than a little bit of my downtime. Once I retired from gymnastics, I think it was like 15. I'd already been doing it for 10 years. So I was traveling. I was setting up for international trips. I was in Colorado for a while at the Olympic Training Center. So I wasn't around much for my siblings to learn from my stupidity. But once I was, they learned quick. And now I've got, one's a doctor, one actually owns the company that I work for, and my sister runs like a mega church. So, yeah, so that I like to think that they learned enough from my stupidity that they did well for themselves.
I definitely think it's a bit of a back and forth, because I mean, you have inherited things from, like, just personality shift, but I do think, like you were talking about, older siblings tend to be the ones who are a bit more of the experiment. Like, everything you do at any point in time in your life is always going to be a first for your parents. And so they're just trying to figure out how to be parents with you, and then you get the next sibling who comes along, and if they're the youngest, it's one of those like, okay, well, I've got an example to operate off of, and so I figured out how to be sneakier. But if you end up being that middle sibling, you kind of get both the role of, I've got someone older than me that's an example, but then I also have someone younger than me that I still have to figure out how to make this work. So it's interesting to see those dynamics at play. The other thing I figured out, if you read Chronicles of Narnia, and I've tested this on a couple of people, so I don't know. We'll see if this is true for you. Who are your favorite siblings in the Chronicles of Narnia?
Honestly, it changed from childhood to when I got older. Initially, Peter was my favorite because oldest. I connected with him. I was like, yes, I get it, dude. Siblings are a pain in the butt. Love them to death, but you want there to be something special about you, and you want to live up to the expectations of others.
Yeah.
As I got older, Lucy actually became my favorite because that blind faith of,
yes,
why can't this be real? Why can't this fantastical reality be where we are, be where we stay? So yeah, from a young age, it was definitely Peter. Once I got older, it became Lucy.
So, Chelsea has actually, she hadn't read the Chronicles of Narnia growing up. And so whenever we got a little bit older, that was one of the book series that we were like, well, you should try it because it's just a classic book series. You need to read it.
So true.
And she read it, and Chelsea is the oldest in her family. Her favorite characters were Susan and Peter.
Fair enough.
Lauren is the middle child in her family, and her favorite characters are Susan and Edmund, and I am the youngest, and my favorite characters are Edmund and Lucy.
Fair enough. See, I was never a fan of Susan.
I can't say anything because, like I said, I'm a younger sibling, so I look at her and I'm like, well, you're just another authority figure for me to rebel against. So.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that's funny. That actually makes so much sense. I really need to go ask my siblings now if that how that worked for them, because we all grew up reading Chronicles of Narnia. We loved the BBC version. We enjoyed the more recent movies, but nobody seems to be able to get past Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Like, come on, people! There's still the Silver Chair. There's still all these other ones. Let's go! But I wonder. I need to ask them now. That's next family gathering, which should be Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But
4th of July.
We actually tend to split at 4th of July. My brother, so one of my brothers, his wife, and her family is all in Oklahoma. So she'll go visit her siblings up there, and sometimes I'll go with her. My other brother doesn't go anywhere because he's very much a homebody. And I have collected all my friends into one location. So this is where I go. It's,
Gotcha.
So, and then of course my parents are like, my mom's studying to be a nurse, so getting her nose out of a book for more than 5 minutes is darn near impossible. And then my dad cooks at a restaurant. So, yeah. But no, it's interesting that you bring up the Chronicles of Narnia, because for me that and Lord of the Rings were like my introductions into high fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you get your start in high fantasy?
I've always been really interested in fantasy. Growing up, one of the, which I don't even know if you're going to know this book, and it's probably a callback for some people, but there was this audiobook that we used to check out from the library called Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher.
I was going to say, I don't think I've encountered that one.
Absolutely loved it. We must have checked that out a million times and just listened to it. And it's about this boy named Jeremy Thatcher who gets a dragon egg and he hatches it and he raises this dragon, but the dragon doesn't belong on the human world and has to leave, and he gets sad, but it's the right thing to do. So that's one of like the earliest books I can remember. And then obviously Chronicles of Narnia was a really big one for me. And then because I have an older sibling, whenever it came to things like the TV, he always had precedence with the remote. So I grew up watching, of course you would say that. Of course you would. But so I grew up watching a lot of X-Men and Spider-Man and, you know, all of those really classic, like late 90s, early 2000s series. And then at some point in time, my mom, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to buy us comic book bundles for Christmas. And so we started getting into comics that way. And then we played a lot of like Pokemon, and really loved Digimon. So it's something that, yes, Gabumon for life.
Yes.
So it's something that I just kind of always had, and I never really understood it as being, because I know there's always this discussion whenever you start getting into some of these things that trend initially during that period, trend being more of something that boys would do rather than girls would do. It was never really something that floated in my head, because like my brother was doing it and I was spending time with my brother. He was my best friend growing up. So like, why couldn't I be interested in it too? Yeah. So it's always just been something I really, really loved. And then whenever I got to an age that I could actually start reading books, my mom was a bigger fan of the library than she was the park. So she would just take us to the library and we would check out a bunch of books to read books. So it's just always been a thing. But that never actually got to the point of D&D until I was in my late 20s, because the area that we grew up in, D&D has a very negative connotation with people, like satanic panic and all that different kind of stuff. And so, you know, my parents were doing what they thought was right by keeping us away from that kind of stuff. So that was something that there were definitely areas within fantasy and nerddom that I didn't access until I was a little bit older. And all of us, myself and my parents, had a little bit more time to kind of reflect back and say, oh, maybe we didn't have to make that decision. But yeah, it's always just been a thing for me.
No, that's fair. So what were some of your favorite books growing up?
Brian Jacks, Redwall series.
Fair
Loved
enough.
it. I read other things that were a little bit more on your less fantasy, more historical. They had like the Dear America series and the Royal Diary series.
Never read
and I read a lot of those. And then Star Wars had some new movies come out around that time. And so I started collecting the Jedi Apprentice books.
Oh, those were so good.
I was pretty sure I was going to be a Jedi at some point in time. So
I could never be a Jedi. I would end up with one arm, no legs, and my head rolling across the floor.
Yes, as an adult, I fully recognize that. But as a child, I was like, yes, I will be a Jedi. This is going to happen someday. I will have a lightsaber.
Yes. We will invent it. It will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know, like, for me growing up, I essentially taught myself to read, and then picked up books and nonstop. You know, most parents, they send their kids to their room as a punishment, take away their electronics, all that. My mom would hide my books until I cleaned my room, and that was literally the worst thing that could ever happen to me, is I could not find my books. It's also part of the reason why I learned to read like 5 books at one time. So if my mom took 1 or 2, okay, I've got 3 more that, and I still do that to this day. I've got like, I think 4 different series I'm going through at the moment.
Mm.
Um, but I started out with Dr. Seuss, like every kid should, and moved on to I was reading. I read Lord of the Rings, I think, when I was 6 or 7. Um,
I'm a grown adult and I still have had trouble getting through the Lord of the Rings, so
oh,
props.
see, I didn't get to the Silmarillion until my older days. But Hobbit and see, when I was a kid, they had a Hobbit cartoon. I say they came out with it came out long before I was around, but
The
I
movie where they sing,
do what?
the movie where they sing.
Yes, 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 yes.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, and my mom's like, that's based on a book. I was like, no, no. And I got so excited. So went to the library, checked out the book, and I got away with it because it was written by a Christian author, which was huge for my mom at the time. And then, of course, Chronicles of Narnia, fantastic. And then my uncle actually got me some Star Wars books, and my grandfather introduced me to Star Wars when I was like 6, so I was set. Um, but I always loved this idea of existing in another world, and the way my brain was wired as a child, I had very vivid imagination, and this idea of immersing myself in another world uh, was honestly part of what led me to D&D when I was 10. Is like, hey, not only do you get to immerse yourself in another world, you actually get to help write the story.
Yeah.
Oh, my little brain just exploded. It was fantastic. And it was one of those things that I love the idea of. I've always thought reading is an enrichment of the mind. Now, granted, there are some things you can read that have the negative side effects, but I feel like that's true of anything. Heck, food has those moments. But I love this idea of these worlds that you can create, that you can write, immerse yourself in, and reading for me was always that gateway into that world. When I started writing my book, like, oh gosh, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, it was the first time that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm going to create a world. I'm going to create a story inside that world, and this is going to be something that I'm going to share with other people. Hence the reason it sat on a desk for 5 years. But this idea of that writing, that sharing, and that creativity is one of the I think one of the great joys of being a creator. And I think that's one of the things I that brings me to this group that of friends that we have is we're all creative types in our own way. Um, Jordan can put together ridiculous things. Garrett is already can put together ridiculous things and is learning how to make more ridiculous things.
Yes.
Wes's artistic abilities with miniatures is dumb because I can't do it. John does woodworking out the wazoo. Lauren is a fantastic storyteller and writer. Not to mention her cosplay, just on point.
Yes.
And then I always wonder, it's like, all right, what does Brenda do? And I remember the first time we got to meet you, you showed up with like what looked like PVC pipe with this like little frame, and you were creating this very beautiful looking image. And I remember, like, I was on the backside of it, and as anybody who has done any type of I almost called it cross stitching. Was that
embroidery?
embroidery? Yeah. the backside doesn't look as pretty.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, what the heck is she making? And I come around and I'm like, there's this beautiful image that you've made, and you're just going through, like, carrying on a conversation and doing this thing, and your hands just never stop moving. I was like, holy cow, that's cool. There would be blood on the floor if I tried this. Because sharp pointy objects, no, bad. Don't.
This too, but
Okay, that's fair. And then you write this amazing backstory for this character that we're just now getting to learn more about. This personality, like the creative genius that comes with, and this is not me just buttering you up, I promise. This is not me just like sucking up to the guest, but it's like this creative genius that we get to see interacting with you, interacting with your character, and then
oh, your audio.
Oh no!
Oh, you're back. I don't know what happened. Oh, now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I smacked the microphone and I accidentally dislodged the cord. If you can't tell, I talk with my hands. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, you don't get to see this. Come check out Twitch or YouTube, because I talk with my hands, and my microphone is way too close for me to do that.
Fun side story to talking with your hands. When we were in high school, we were doing a speech. We were assigned to do a speech for a class. And so I get up there and I start doing my speech, and I get feedback from the teacher, and she has this comment on there that says little duckling. And so I go back to her and I'm like, I don't understand this feedback. And she said, well, and it's hard to show you because I'm sitting down low enough, but apparently I was standing up there and I had my elbows to my side, but I was still talking with my hands. So I was just doing this the whole time. And she's like, it reminded me of a little duckling. Ever since then, so my nickname in high school ended up being Ducky. And ever since then, Lauren likes to buy me a lot of duck stuff. So she bought me toys for Christmas that have a duck inside of them.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. Because, like, we've all talked about our spirit animals. Mine obviously is a panda, hence the Pandaverse thing. I still think Lauren is a cat. 100% meow meow. Jonathan is a puppy. We're not sure what breed yet, but Jonathan's a puppy.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what Wesley was. I think Wesley was like a weasel or something, or an otter, something of that nature. No, he was a chameleon. That's what it was. He was a chameleon.
We can go back to the first one. That's really funny. Wesley weasel.
Jordan was the otter.
Okay.
Wesley, I think, was the chameleon. I forget what Garrett's was. I think Garrett's may have been a puppy too. And now we got a duck. This makes me so happy.
Much I can claim that though, because I love it when it rains and ducks don't.
Yeah, but water just kind of rolls off the duck's back, and they can take things in stride. And
I'll accept this. Keep talking.
There was another one. You could take the whole. Depending on the type of duck, they're really pretty. And although sometimes the boys are prettier than the girls, so I'm not sure if that analogy actually works. So, yeah. I was like, I can keep going, but I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble if I do. That's like one of those moments. It's like, yeah, go on. It's like, no, I sense I've made a mistake.
I can see it coming out of my mouth as we speak.
And you're just like, no, come back, don't do it. Oh, man. So, in an effort, since our audience is getting to meet you and really get to know you for the first time, and you have shared a fun story, I'm going to get one of those stories that maybe you're not so happy to share We need an embarrassing story.
Oh.
Something that just makes you kind of facepalm about yourself.
Oh God.
Because you know, if you don't tell it, Lauren will.
She's more than welcome to. The problem is, like, I know they've happened, but I also try really hard not to hold on to those things because it's like, what am I supposed to do about it? It happened.
Because these are the funny stories that you get to tell. You know, I tell the story of lighting myself on fire. You know, you have the story of. And yes, I'm putting you on the spot.
You're very much putting me on the spot, and I'm having to think.
Oh, you guys made me think.
Like, I know they've happened, but this is kind of similar to the first, like, tell us about yourself question, where all of a sudden my brain's like, I know it exists, but I'm not sure what. I'm sorry for any meowing you hear in the background. My cats are very upset they cannot access me right now.
Oh, the joys of being a pet owner. It's okay, my dumb dog's been running around chasing squirrels all day, and Doc ran into the fence trying to get to the squirrel, and I'm just like, why? Like, not even just, oh, I bumped it, or oh, I couldn't stop. Like, forgot that the fence was there, and just full pell-mell. I was just sitting, and I'm just watching it. Like, he takes off, and I'm like, you may want to slow down. You may want to stop. Oh. And you want to think that, hey, he's going to learn his lesson, but he doesn't. He'll do it again in 10 minutes.
Well, not to completely sidestep the question, I give Lauren full permission if she thinks of an embarrassing story to tell it.
Fair enough.
I just genuinely cannot think of anything.
Okay, so we jokingly, and I hope you don't mind me sharing what we jokingly call your trio of goofballs.
Oh yeah.
But we jokingly call y'all the Coven because y'all there's waving of magic wands, there's reading of incantations, there's muttering of dark phrases, and dadgummit, I keep hitting this microphone. And then poof, something happens, something appears, like a beautiful scarf or, you know, embroidery or things of that nature. Do you have a favorite Coven story? Like, we three did this thing and it was a blast, and I enjoy telling this story.
I mean, everything we do is a blast, but and I guess this kind of gets into an embarrassing story as well. It's not super embarrassing, like it's gonna be one of those that you're probably gonna be like, Brenda, that was not embarrassing, but
no judgment.
We like to go to Renaissance festivals, and so Lauren obviously is the one who likes to cosplay a lot. And so every year that we go to a Renaissance festival, Lauren's always dressing up. And then Chelsea and I don't. And then inevitably we run into one of the people who actually works at the Renaissance festival, pretending that they're like royalty or courtiers or something like that. And they, you know, bow to Lauren, and then they look at Chelsea and I and ask us why we're underdressed. Gotta love the people at Renaissance festivals. Like, yeah. Top notch. But the reason I bring this up, this sort of embarrassing thing, I was very, very certain I knew how to get through this Renaissance festival. And I was like, we can get to the restrooms because we had to go to the restroom. We can get to the restrooms if we just cut through this way. And Chelsea was like, I don't think you can do that. I'm pretty sure there's a wall there. And I was like, there's not a wall there. We're going to walk over there and it'll be fine. And we walked over there. There was a wall there. So we had to go around. But we do Renaissance festivals a whole lot. We really, really enjoy that. But we always end Renaissance festivals by going to a bookstore. And it's just it's very much the three of us. And that's one of the sort of the big, it's sad because we couldn't do that last year, but that's one of sort of the big memories that we always have every single year, is going to the Renaissance festival and then going to the bookstore. And Lauren 9 times out of 10 is walking around still in her Renaissance festival stuff, looking at books. We do that a whole lot. I mean, probably one of my favorite memories from last year, whenever we were dealing with quarantine and COVID, is we were really used to seeing each other weekly or bi-weekly,
Mm-hmm.
like spending time together. We would always find time to see each other, and we couldn't do that because it was quarantine. And Chelsea's and my birthdays are very, very close together. And so we were trying to figure out how we were going to celebrate birthdays, even though we were dealing with quarantine. And I cannot remember who came up with it, but someone was like, well, what if we all go get to go from Einstein's Bagels and we meet at a park, and we just open up trunks and sit in the trunk and we can have breakfast together, socially distanced breakfast together. And that was probably one of the biggest lifelines early on into quarantine, because it was one of those, like, I can't touch you and I can't necessarily spend like a lot of time with you, but I can still see you in person and we can still have a meal together and we can talk to each other. So that's probably one of the things from last year that stands out the most whenever it comes to the three of us, is just the fact that, like, we've been friends for so long. And time has passed and we all went to college in different places, and so there were times where we were separate, and just having people who have known you for that long and being in a situation where it's like, don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to make it work. I have no other friends like that, and it's not to say I will never get people who will have that kind of friendship, but just the longevity of how long we've known each other. It's something I really, really treasure. So.
Yeah, that, with everything with the quarantines and the COVID, that threw everybody's lives out of whack. And I know for us, I mean, it changed our lives completely.
Yeah.
Not just for our game, but our relationships with each other. This group became these group of friends became everything, whereas before it was like, yeah, this is my other group of friends, and these are my D&D friends, and these are my this friends, and it's like, these are the people I can't live without. These are the people that I got very lucky that half of my friend group actually lives with me. I am the collector, but I know for a lot of people they didn't have that, and which made last year incredibly difficult. I know Lauren and I would spend hours just talking about how much we missed being able to see people, and we're all very huggy people. Like, we like hugs. And it's like, I need to hug a person, and I need to hug that person, and that person's I can't go hug them, and that's sad. But the irreplaceability of those longtime friendships, I've known John and Lauren for about seven years now. Wes I've known for about 5-6 years. Jordan and Garrett I just met. I just met. Chelsea Chelsea's kind of weird.
I mean, yes, but
Yeah.
also the situation.
But like, I actually met her when y'all were all in high school, because my mother used to take the school photos.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was her assistant at the time. So I met Lauren because my dad and her dad were friends. And I met Chelsea because from helping my mom one time. I may have met you, but I don't remember. But the we didn't really start building relationships until the last 2 years. Even with Wes, Garrett, and Jordan, even though I knew Wes, he was the friend of the friends.
Yeah.
And it was very much this. Now it's like, okay, if you people leave my life, this is not going to end well for me. So as much as I despise everything that COVID has taken from us and the world at large, the way things are, I do appreciate the fact that I realized very quickly how important certain relationships were to me, and being able to grab tight onto those relationships was absolutely fantastic. And we have we make jokes about the warlocks versus the covens, the warlocks versus witches, and um, that we see that battle happen every time Lauren rolls a natural 20, and we're like, man, we forgot to curse that dice. Uh, and then of course she does the same to us, where Wesley can't roll above a 10 for some reason. Uh, but this the getting together weekly, even over Zoom, and everything, still has helped build those relationships. Having our bonfires, which we need to do again now that the weather's not, below zero. That was for those of you who weren't in Texas and didn't have to deal with that, congratulations. And for those of you in the northern states who go snowstorms, what? No. Okay, as somebody who spent a significant amount of time in the north, northerners are ready for that. Yeah. That they have equipment and supplies, and they know, hey, a week in advance, storm's coming. We know how to prepare. Texans don't. And never have I ever been more frustrated at a culture in my life, and yes, Texas is a culture, than these goofballs who, one, have no idea how to prepare for a snowstorm. Texas houses aren't built for snowstorms. And Texas people are not built for snowstorms. They're just not. They walk outside, they see white stuff, they go, the world is ending. It's like, no, just give it a few days, it'll melt.
They're happy for the first 30 seconds, and they're like, this is great. So now what do we do?
Right? And it's like, oh, we should have gone to the store 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. And of course, then you go try to get out on the road to go to said store, and all of a sudden there's 6 inches of snow, and under that is an inch of ice, and they're like, I don't know how many people I got messages from going, hey, I'm stuck in a ditch. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Do you need me to come pull you out? No, I just wanted to tell you I'm stuck in a ditch. Good job, y'all. But that was a mess. So we definitely need to do another burn soon. It's the closest I get to go to Burning Man. Which, unlike the name suggests, we don't actually burn people.
I mean, you burn an effigy of the man.
Well, I mean, that's true, but our Burning Man is we burn logs and marshmallow people.
Thank you.
We burn marshmallow effigies.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we got hit by the snowstorm. We burned one too many marshmallow snowmen.
If that's the case, it is not on me, and it is entirely on the people who live in that house.
No, that's 100% us. We are pyromaniacs, and we own that.
Namely, the one with a room down the hall.
Okay, so from my perspective, they're all down the hall. So the one across from the room I'm currently in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I 100%. You are absolutely correct. Not that I'm any better, but I will at least I at least learned from my mistake of lighting myself on fire, and I don't do it intentionally anymore. Wesley doesn't have that many brain cells, so
Wesley is a chaos engine.
He is absolutely an agent of chaos, and I love him for it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I am not complaining most of the time. There's some times that, like, I'm like, dude, just flick. But for the most part, I enjoy his chaos. But yeah, there's I miss our burns. I miss people.
Yeah.
I want my people back. I'm looking forward to us getting to be all under one roof again someday.
Right.
Do what?
Over the rainbow, where dreams do come true.
I think that was some. Well, yeah, that worked. I was sitting there going like, wait, lyrics, song lyrics. The downside of being a musician, we get fixated on song lyrics and music. Uh, speaking of everybody getting back together, um, we all saw each other last night in preparation of in recording of our session for tomorrow. We can't get into spoilers, but in the few minutes we have left, Rye has been going through a lot these last couple episodes. How is she feeling right now?
I think she's surprisingly emotionally invested in what's happening. I think right now the biggest thing is like there's just so much adrenaline. Like there's so much adrenaline. And I think once we get to a space where like things have come to a resolution, hopefully a good resolution.
Right.
I think at that point in time it'll be a moment where she kind of like breathes a little bit. And I think the funny thing about it is, again, not getting into spoilers, but at this point in time, because Ryan Halberd are not with the rest of the party, from their perspective, the biggest like issue is the one they're currently dealing with. So they have no idea what's happening with the rest of the party. So I feel like that adrenaline's going to drop and they're going to be like, we should probably get back to make sure that the house is not on fire.
Who was it that sent the text about mom and dad left the kids alone? Was that you?
Yes. Yes. But I think it's one of those like jokingly, oh, we better get back to make sure the house is not on fire, and don't realize there's really actually a lot to be panicking about right now.
The house is very much on fire.
So I think right now she's just dealing with a lot of adrenaline and surprised by how emotionally invested she is. And I think in some ways also a little surprised by the developments that have kind of like relationally happened with her and Halberd.
I think we all are surprised.
So I think that's kind of where she's at. Brenda, on the other hand, is just going, what happened? Because I was pretty sure, we were going to take this little girl to the library and I was going to get to flaunt the library and we were going to take care of the little girl and everything would be great. And Lauren did a bait and switch. And somehow we've got all of this going on. And I was texting Jonathan and I was like, so Ryan and Halberd are going to be trauma friends.
Right.
After this whole situation. So that's where like, because I see everything else that's happening, I'm freaking out. But right now, Rye's just like, if we can just get through this thing, it'll be fine. And we can keep moving forward.
Well, I mean, Rye had a very, the previous episode, Rye had a very, like, emotional moment of, hey, I'm gonna, Rye has these walls, like, layers of walls, and she opened one or two of the gates, and it kind of let Halberd in a little bit, and, I mean, it was emotional kind of for everybody, not just for Rye, but how did you, as her player, handle that emotion?
I think in some ways this is, again, because I like made Ryan, I had this whole backstory in her and I had all of this information, and things would happen during sessions and I'd be like, Ryan's not there to do anything with it. And so initially I was just like, oh, cool, we get to have some of these conversations. Like, you get to see Rye around her family. You get to see Rye whenever she's in a place that she feels safer and can be a little bit more like open with who she is. Like super, super cool. And was not expecting to have any sort of like super emotional reaction. And then we started talking about Donner, which we'll get into that a little bit more in coming episodes. But we started getting into Donner, who is a very formative person for Rye, a relatively recent death in her life. And because she's still at a state where everyone in the party, as much as she may like them, some more than others, they're still to her ultimately strangers. She doesn't know them a whole lot. And so it is definitely like, once you start getting closer to some of those topics, she's gonna have that like, no, you don't get to just know that. And so I think whenever Halberd started opening up with his own sort of vulnerability of like, I get it, painful things happen, I'm just trying to understand you a little bit more, we started talking about it. And I personally was just kind of like, I was trying so hard not to just break down crying, because I know how big of a deal Donner is to Rye, and how formative that he is to her. And so it was one of those, like, Brenda wants to cry. Rye would be trying anything and everything she can to just keep this very stoic, like, it's a thing that happened. You asked for more information. Here is the information. That's the most that you're getting out of me, because it's starting to get a little bit too close of, I don't know you enough to be able to actually trust you with some
this
of
emotion. And yeah.
So it was definitely like that terror between, how do I do this as a person playing a character whenever I want to just break down in tears.
Right. Well, because I know, I mean, honestly, that actually opened the emotional doors for a lot of us, is watching Brenda emotionally, I know this is going to sound terrible, but emotionally struggle with this character of, you know, you could see the tears welling up, you know, behind your eyes, and hear the catch in your voice and everything. And for us, I mean, that was just a black hole of emotion that sucked us in. And it's like, now we're getting emotionally invested, which then you have Halberd going all daddy elf, and it's just like, oh.
What happened? What happened? He apologized and then he hugged her. What happened?
What? It was like, and I love, like, you know, we talked about like immersing ourselves into worlds and everything, but that was an emotional immersion that I wasn't expecting to happen. I wasn't ready for it. It was just like, my poor little panda heart went, I love this. Let's do this more. And you know, which led, I mean, honestly, it led to, you know, Val actually, you know, me feeling more comfortable with letting Val emotionally kind of like, hey, I recognize we did it dumb, and we were not considerate, and I am sorry, and you know, we're gonna get, you know, some of this stuff we'll get into more of the tomorrow night's episode, but this idea of we're emotionally invested in, and I'm sure it helped that we actually found a child that we didn't accidentally kill, you know. John and I made the joke, is like, you know, we're doing a you know, trying to help Vanera and do all this stuff, and it's like, can we leave her alive, please? And it's like, why do you think I didn't go with y'all? I'm not taking any risks. We're leaving this one alive.
It's like, yeah, I'm definitely very interested to see how this continues to progress, because I think one of the things I started figuring out the further I got into playing Rye is she she will respond to people in similar, like in a like manner. And so in some ways she's very reflective. And so while she obviously has opinions that goes into how she decides to interact with someone, she can still be very sort of reflective in people that she's feeling a little bit more comfortable with. If they come to her from a little bit of a softer manner, she will approach a little bit more softly. But and I think this is kind of the big thing that you're seeing a lot with her and Celiax. If you come at it from very much like a hard punch, sort of like she's like, I'm not moving, you will find a wall there. And so I think it will be interesting to see how this works moving forward, because as soon as we leave the library, Rye's not going to continue to be this very like emotionally open and vulnerable person. But then we've also had this like shift because of what happened with her and Halberd. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out moving forward.
Yeah. Unless it's Val coming to her from a place of like this softness, and then she's like, it ain't a thing unless you make it a thing.
Why are you talking to me? I don't want to talk to you.
I also feel like I feel like she expected more of Val than Val was, where Val was at. You know, because Val's a youngster. You know, he turned 20 right before stupid things happened to the Sanctum and all that ridiculousness. And Val entered this world in full-on panic mode. Like, my home just got attacked. I don't know where anybody is. I don't know who's alive, who's dead. And the one job I had, I screwed up. I literally dropped the book. And so, you know, he's had this, like, idea of panic. And so then he meets, you know, he comes from a matriarchal society, so very much, you know, if he finds a female in who he views as an authoritative figure, he immediately goes into sub mode, and is so he sees Rye, who's had more experience, grew up in a sanctum, in an older sanctum nonetheless, and he's like, this person could show me what it means to be a runner and can help me deal with life, and I can learn so much for her. And she's like, really? Why you stupid?
I mean, there's definitely, like I said, there are reasons why with some characters she interacts with them better than others. But I do think, like, speaking specifically whenever it comes to Val, there is sort of this dual sense of he's supposed to be from a sanctum, and how is it that he's reacting or making decisions or saying these things? So there's a little bit of that, but then the other side of it, which has come out a couple of times, I don't know how frequently Val's been there for those actual conversations, but fundamentally Rye is not really a patient person. And
he gathered.
She's not a patient person, and she is self-aware enough to know she is not the right person to teach other people how to do their jobs. She does not have that patience. She does not have that skill set. And frankly, she's not interested in gaining it. So I think it's like you combine all of those things together, and very much with Val, it's just kind of like, I don't know what you want from me because I'm not going to give it to you.
Right. Now, it's a very interesting dynamic because, you know, Val came in, you know, as a secondary character when Lauren killed off my first one.
There's debate around this subject.
You know what? He died. She brought him back to life. But it was her creature that killed him. So she made the choice for the vampire to bite Val and him to permadie.
Oh, okay.
So, Cora. Now, granted, it was Cora's dumbass that got himself in the situation in the first place, but, you know, that's there. But regardless, so he's coming in as a character with, you know, with abandonment issues, with, you know, he was a former slave. He's only been a runner for a couple years. he was so, he was gifted, he was powerful, and so he got sent on his own, like every other oldest child that ever gets. It's like, you know, you yes, you should know what you're doing. You're strong, you're big, you're the oldest. You set the example for the younger ones. And he's just like, but I don't know what I'm doing. Why? So it's this interesting dynamic between, the rest of the group, who are all older characters. He is the baby of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, what before Rye, he was also the most experienced when it came to planar travel and all this other stuff. And then he's got Ryan. He's like, oh, she can fill in the gaps. She can do all this stuff. And then it's like Rye's like, nah, fam, we ain't playing that game. I got no interest in you whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's a cool dynamic, though. I'm really interested to see what happens in the coming episodes, and especially as we approach the eventual big bad of what's about to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how all this works, but
yeah, because I mean, we're definitely, at least from Ryan's perspective, there's definitely sort of a shifting in position whenever it comes to this. Because I was joking with Lauren previously, like, we always talk about, oh no, another side quest, but from Ryan's perspective, you guys are the side quest.
I mean, that's true.
So she's just like, can we wrap this up? But as things have been developing, she's like, this is a little bit more than I was expecting.
Maybe this is a little more main quest than I realized.
Yeah.
Especially as certain backstory elements are revealed, and how tied up Rye may actually be in this, whether she wants to be or not.
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
We will find out. Well, that is all the time we have today. This is gonna be fun. I am so looking forward to all the shenanigans. And Brenda, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute blast. For those of you who are out of the loop of some of the stuff we were talking about, you can go check out our Twitch and YouTube channels. All of our episodes are on our YouTube channel, so you can go back to day one and catch up on some of this stuff and binge watch. You can watch us live on Twitch tomorrow night at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. Central. And then not this coming Tuesday, but the next Tuesday, we'll have another guest. And we'll do this all over again. So don't forget to check us out. Click a follow, click a like. Follows are free. Subscribe if you want early access to all the craziness. And we will see you guys on the next one. Have a great night.